Thank you. I had some comments, but I asked the PhD director Hernando Santamaría to do those remarks. I think he will be better at it, and he will be able to address these three presentations. The one by Juan Camilo Cárdenas. Can you check if he's still here? A second important presentation, which is the cross-disciplinary work that beyond behavioral economy we integrate social psychology and neuroscience, and also decision making, and understand which factors can help us to increase. And finally, this amazing work that Pablo and his colleague have undertaken, and they have created social change not just in Montes de Maria but also in Cartagena. Pablo does a lot of work geared towards both communities through his opinion pieces and other mechanisms such as Twitter and other things that he does. Follow him. And Hernando, thank you. I want to publicly thank Hernando for, along with Professor Reyes, they have promoted the PhD program that is started by Dr. Gomez and Dr. Matallana. All the work to have a program like the one we have, to find the grants and the scholarships, these interesting and ambitious projects, and that's why I feel that Dr. Santamaría, that tomorrow is going to open with one of the concepts that we want to tie to Juan Camilo's proposal of peace with nature. It's highly relevant that we hear from you, doctor, and everyone. We understand that at 5 many of you must go, so tomorrow at 8 a.m. we'll see you again, and the streaming will be live as well. Today we had over 200 people through streaming, and here we had over 50 people at the auditorium from many entities that are key for the country. And finally, we have people that are enrolling from all over the world, so this is a conversation that is just starting. This is the first seminar, thinking that the next year we'll have another one, and more colleagues hopefully will join us, and Boaz hopefully will visit us again. Okay, thank you everyone. My remarks. The first thing I want to say is that I'm thankful for the speakers for sharing their research that caused a lot of questions. I think I'm just gonna address 4 points. The first one is something that Pablo de Bols mentioned when at the beginning when he addressed the Leviathan and Thomas Hobbes. And I thought that was thought-provoking, and thank you, Pablo, for raising that. Because of the huge traditional dispute of violence, the question on whether violence is predetermined or is modulated by social factors. I think the bottom of line of this seminar is that we have similar questions, and we have these approaches like the one Hobbes, the man is wild from man at Leviathan, and other approaches, for example Rousseau, that encourages to think that contextual and social factors have an impact and might be modulating individual actions. And I think that here we are continuously talking about things that happen at a collective level, at a group level, at an individual level, and sometimes I think that our big opportunity to build a peace neuroscience, if we can keep working on this, is to find the right channels to convey, to address the collective and the individual. And here's my remark. And my remark is, I'm a psychiatrist. I have always worked in social neuroscience, in humans. If we had another teacher working in molecular neuroscience or genetic neuroscience, they may say something else. But I think there's some underlying things. The first one, and as someone who works in neuroscience, that can say, what can I contribute to these researchers who are doing such interesting work in behavioral sciences, in economics, or in Eliape, following the model of Professor Fasborda and everything that you're doing at Montes de Maria. And I say possibly I could help to understand the mistakes of neuroscience and the things that it doesn't accomplish. What it accomplishes, I don't know. I know the 3 or 4 lines of work that I've worked with and what I read, but what I think neuroscience does is not able to accomplish and that are to be developed. I think I can talk about that and how we can contribute and help you. And I say that that's important for the following reason. There is a hedonist spirit from those who conduct research in neuroscience without intervention. Many do things to understand things, and we end understanding, and we end there. We publish and we end there. But there's a certain kind of hedonism, self-contemplation, and satisfy intellectual curiosity. There's enjoyment on finding answers to certain questions that sometimes don't have an impact on community. In a country like Colombia, to have an impact is a must. So that's why it's highly relevant the invitation that you've all made in your presentations for all of you that work with communities to intervene, from Professor Boas, Professor Juan Camilo Cárdenas, what Pablo does, and what Santiago tells us, and all other colleagues of the School of Economics. So I can say that for me is highly interesting is that many of us that work in neuroscience in human, we are asking questions about understanding phenomena and not about how to improve or strengthen interventions, and that could be a good field from my point of view in which dialogue could lead to something positive. Find which aspects of biological questions can lead to longer lasting interventions, more specific to the context, ecological, could generate more active interventions to modify actions on the long term. And when I say an active, meaning that they are acted upon when needed. Many of the questions that we deal with in neuroscience, psychiatry, and psychology, they address traits, marks, as if we were all the same throughout life. I am neurotic. I am a leftist. I am a right wing, as if that marked all behavioral trajectories. Possibly it defines them to a great extent, but one-on-one interactions, at least the interventions you have presented today, shows that one-on-one interventions, as some videos, are highly relevant to drive change. And that's something that is important about what neuroscience can contribute. That's the first idea. The second idea is something that I heard from Professor Cardenas, and it brings me hope. And it's my intuition, and perhaps my colleagues might forgive me, but there is a hypercritical reflection regarding individual goods, the notion of individual goods as opposed to social goods, and that's interesting. It's a challenge to homus economicus to shift towards homus contextualized, ecological being, a naturalized being, embedded into nature that relieves and provides wellness. And I thank Professor Cardenas for that invitation. And I thank him because it coincides with certain things, and that might be a bias, but I would like to highlight it. It aligns with certain findings that we have found in social neuroscience. We cannot dismiss that there are individual behaviors. Humans sometimes want to differentiate from each other. In the proposal of Professor Cardenas, there's the notion that we're going to be better, at least an intuition with his 2 final ideas, that we might be better off if we had shared goods, if we had massive social wellness, active social wellness. And the answer might be yes, but I also think that because I'm skeptical, that there would individualization things might emerge, because we all have this, but I fine-tune it to my own, because that's part of identities. But the question is highly relevant, very powerful, and very interesting, and is what value does other thing, this embedded social, have over the economic being. And it coincides with something that we do in social neuroscience, because even though we cannot dismiss the homus economicus, we can raise a parallel model, which is the social being, in which not every human action seeks to use individual values or individual resources. Not every human action has that level of utilitarianism. And there's many findings in neuroscience that reveal how one is rewarded implicitly by helping others, how being prosocial and altruistic have rewards or reward us. Professor Cardenas was wondering about that. He showed us a study of certain areas that have rewards or yield rewards by being with others and by being in touch with nature, that yields rewards. And those individual rewards are also accomplished if one does something for others.
That was the second idea that I wanted to express. The third idea has to do a little bit with this stake by Professor Cardenas to invite us to think about an approach to nature, and the idea comes together with reflections that I have had with one of our PhD students who was part of the Economic and Administrative Sciences School and who is now taking the internship in Yale. And it's an intuition that I find quite interesting, and it's Isabella believes, and we have talked a lot about that, that the people with motivations and curiosity about certain pro-environmental actions, it's people with more pro-sociality. In depth, what they are saying is that in a way, it's like if you had empathy and interest to mobilize, and that means personal work and a lot of things because helping the other is difficult. But those who have motivation and mobilization for the other, not only for the other, but let's suppose an expanded moral circle that touches nature, that touches the natural resources. It might seem that it might have a pro-social actions much more solid. The intuition is if I'm able to empathize with the other, how much am I able to empathize with an expanded moral circle that includes the trees, natural resources, etc. And I think that talks to the conversation by Professor Cardenas to think about these notions of universal goods, and let's say about this invitation to these agendas or research programs. I think that it coincides with something of what Professor Boas has said and others. When you talk about the interventions, and is that in depth, a large extent of the conversations that you tell, it seems to invite us to generate it, expanded us the paradoxical thinking, reducing the bias towards the other. And also, Professor Cardenas mentioned seem to invite us to generate an expanded moral circle where the other, even nature, can be part of us. So those of you who are part of neuroscience, we know that those in-group, out-group models are determinants of the behavior, and you have more empathy for the one who is similar to me, and I can generate antisocial actions towards the one that I find a little bit different. The famous stadium effect, how you celebrate when the opposite team loses. This actually is enjoying when the for the bad of others. So part of the interventions you say seem to say, yeah, if we expand the us, maybe we generate changes, and that notion I find it interesting, and that notion coincides with this exploration shared by Professor Cardenas. The approximations made by Santiago also contradict a little bit those who want to do neuroscience with super sophisticated color brain waves, etc., the functional connectivity, wavelengths, etc. It's in depth. There is this intention not only to measure these cross behaviors, but also because it can generate also biases. Measuring them is necessary, but why we don't support it with implicit measures that reveal at least double a dialogue between what is said, what we want to do, and some behavioral bias that prevent us from doing it in the same way towards others. And there is like this door I was saying about understanding neural and cognitive behaviors that I think that are quite necessary. part of the behaviors that you have shown beyond the methodological route that I think that is quite renovating, and a large part of work is talking about how to implement intervention programs that module that restrictive I and ourselves. And then finally, my comment of to the entire process that Pablo and Paul are carrying out, the work they do in Montes de Maria. First, the fact that it's this investigation that comes like based on ethnography, on the needs of people, Professor Borda. So I think that it also generated this invitation to say if we want to generate these dialogues, neuroscience should have at least this ethnographic approach or intention to generate contextualized questions that come from the needs of people. And now, like a professor said, from the universities with these center peripheral models, the universities that we put over there, a project that we came out with that came up in this article of Nature, at least the your approach, generate some reflections. I love the model of the performative memory. For me personally, I talked to Pablo Reyes is something mobilizing in that it coincides a lot, and I finished with this. I don't want to bore you anymore. I'm sorry. I took longer. I apologize for that. I am excited. But I just wanted to tell you about that. Is this model of performing as a way to understand? I think it's very interesting, and I think that it matches to something that is of the large research of neuroscience that is around these elements of corporized, contextualized cognition included in a community, and that is active, that is in action, that it's in a way in execution, under execution, so that as a model to understand other things that happen in your mind. And I think this is a key, because if you might want to generate these interventions, Dr. Matallana says, so we need to put the video where people have the broken arm. If we don't mobilize the emotional hearts, there won't be change. And I think it has to do with this. Change cannot be learned in a book. You cannot read or follow a path. Change has to be lived. And the change that is connected to the body can generate this synthesis of change, collective change. And this is the point. I think the lack of interaction that we like doing today seems to promote things of generating change, but not many of these research consider the work of the fingerprint of what is left behind, everything that you do, the memory. I think is quite relevant to build this strata of collective behavior that allows generating changes ahead. We might be failing in that, in generating models that are out of context of that stratum of memory that can be triggering behaviors that we do not understand. A lot of reflections that I wanted to share, a lot of questions, motivations. Thank you all, guys. Bye-bye. Thank you. I just want to break a protocol a little bit, taking advantage of the fact that Juan Camilo is still online. And Juan Camilo, it's still some. Okay. I don't know if you want to share something else after having heard our colleagues. Yep. Just I agree a lot with Pablo. We have conversations. We have been having a lot of talks, and see how this idea of moving to a model of this human, like I was trying to present, embedded in the cultural and the biophysical, it's quite evident in the work that they have been doing in all these ways. And see one thing, the idea of relating or connecting to other in all that work in Montes de Maria, it's not only present there, but I mean it's very probable that these efforts that Pablo has made, it's undeniable for the people they were, all these women and many of these communities. It's inseparable, the idea of relating to others, relating to nature. And the other comment that I wanted to do is that I found fascinating. Hernando's mention to this work that he mentioned that I wasn't able to notice the name of somebody who came from economic science and went through medicine and who is taking this internship, and I just wanted to show you an image that is in that line. So I'll try to share here in a second, if I may, this photo, and I hope that you're seeing it. I don't know if you're seeing that, the share screen, the photo. This is a chapter of a book that was published in this with Routledge in about the economic policy of the environment, and the chapter that I wrote there was based on the data of this largest survey for the Sustainable Development Goals for Latin America in Los Andes University. This is the largest survey in 7 countries, 13 cities. There you see the 7 countries, and is the systematic result is exactly what Hernando was mentioning, and is the strong and statistically robust correlation that people with better pro-environmental behaviors or attitudes towards the environment statistically associated to people with more pro-social behaviors. So with progressist concerns to help the others, and the result is super progressive. And the countries that we gathered the sample, this is representative sample, except the case of Costa Rica. Uh, but I just wanted to show you that because um, I think that it fit. And just if somebody needs the text, I will be glad to send you this copy of that text. But I wanted to share that, and exactly goes hand in hand with that about what is it that we can learn from this idea that in a common denominator about the cognitive system of humans has a full awareness of the social and physical context. And the question is, how do we use from neurosciences, science of behavior, understanding those mechanisms to empower them for that better social contract I was talking about. So I just wanted to react about that, and thank you for that. Okay, Juan Camilo, yeah, maybe comments, questions, I don't know. We want to respect your time and the time of the teams that have worked. I would like to thank in particular to all our guests, those who traveled far away, like Boaz Martin, who's here too, Pablo, well, professors, students. We were talking to Professor Lopez that we have to do a lot of integration of our programs, and there have been people who does a lot of social practice. We are together since Tuesday, hopefully tomorrow with Senator Cepeda, with all that table when we are going to give them those reflections of public policy, can be with us at the end of the day and share the experience of being the entire week. And those who do this practice for the social change, people who work with art, with applied psychology, and this has been a luxury. People in a network, some. I think that thank you, guys, to the translators. Some professors have them suffer. I don't know how it went. Let's hope. Thank you very much. And say his team who did a good job, and the team in the economy school. Thank you for this. And our friends in the auditorium and the security team in the university. Good work. So thank you very much.